I write so much about people who are, censored, like Russian dissident organizations that like they no longer have access to their banking accounts. Like Nigerian protesters were getting shot at and things like that. In Bangladesh, they had the internet got taken down and like 200, 300 people died of the student protesters. And people were like still messaging me about what was going on, even though the internet was gone down, right? So these are the kind of situations when you think about freedom on the line and the tools that you need, the VPNs, the security, the privacy, the ability to be able to transact money and raise funds, even though, state authorities don't like it, the ability to be able to talk to other people about what's going on. Like this is where Bitcoin and Nostr is so critical. And one of the big things, I know I wrote a book about Bitcoin in China, but I've been trying to tell people through the articles and everywhere else that this isn't just a China thing. I think it's just like really easy to be like, oh, China, dystopian, obviously CCPs like running around, there's cameras everywhere. They did to the Uyghurs and everything, terrible. But, coming to a place near you, maybe. And that's what I've been trying to stress to people. Like, the things that you condemn and like other governments for, we have to be on watch for. There's a trucker protest. They're freezing funds in Telegram with France, right? Like they arrested the founder of a company because they were trying to modify the company's policies to be more in the state's interest. They're trying to take end-to-end encryption down. I've been writing a lot about this. They're trying to stop the ability for people to be able to talk to one another without prying eyes. And they're always going to say like the worst things about it, right? They're going to be like, oh, well, there's child pornography on the internet. So therefore, you can never have end-to-end encryption. The Europeans are trying to put up surveillance on every client-side device. Like you log in and it has like image recognition of all your images in order to solve these problems. What it comes down to is this root of like all these different governments, right? They just don't trust people, their people, and they're trying to implement as many tools of surveillance and power as possible. And so even though China is the most aggressive example, and they've gone after, like, I talked to Will of like Damus on Nostr, they banned the Damus app, they banned the relays, right? They like made it so it's like illegal to trade on exchanges. So they are a country that has been the most aggressive about, trying to implement digital surveillance and fight freedom tech tools. But other countries are also watching. And I will say that in some countries, you're seeing like facial recognition being used, cops coming in the United Kingdom and stuff like that. In other countries around the world, there's examples of like Iran, for example, they're automatically withdrawing money and accounts. And one of the things I tell people is during the Hong Kong protests, what ended up happening is they ended up freezing the bank accounts. That was like one of the first things that happened. And so it was almost impossible to raise funds. And so that's the first way they go after you for that. So that's been top of mind for me. I'm always thinking that there's just so much. And I want to tell people, like, for me, it's really important that there's like 100 articles that go over and like try to make it like a mainstream thing. And I saw this with the digital yuan. So I wrote a lot about the digital yuan, which is kind of like the Chinese version of central bank digital currency, probably the most advanced central bank digital currency in the world right now. It's implemented in 29 cities. And I was always like, this is such a negative thing. Like, you're just giving the government directly the ability to be able to control your money, to surveil your money. Originally, when Hal Finney talked about Bitcoin, this is exactly the dystopia that he was hedging against. And it's happening live. And the thing with that is that other countries are watching what China's doing. And even rivals to China, like India and other places, Nigeria, they're thinking of implementing it. And they're implementing it by force. They're forcing people to implement CBDCs because they know people don't actually want it. And in China itself, for example, not that many people are adopting the digital yuan, but you have the Chinese state media. In Nigeria, you have like law enforcement. In China, you have law enforcement that will arrest you for trading, Bitcoin or Tether or anything else. And so the state is right now at this moment where it's trying, every state in the world, I'm trying to say, China just happens to be the most aggressive and the easiest to point to. But your country, the United States, Canada, all these different places, they are trying to take advantage of technology and try to create a system of control and political power that entrenches political structure. I mean, I can almost say forever or endlessly. right? Because if you know how people spend, if you know how people think, that's when you can control people perfectly. So